the modern city of Florida, where the beaches with pristine white sand and bright sunny rays have become a part of everyday life. Pam Bondi, a renowned lawyer and political figure, could never have imagined that a simple lunch with friends would mark the beginning of changes she could never have predicted. She stood at the restaurant's doorstep, her hands slightly trembling with excitement. It was her favorite place, a small restaurant with an elegant interior, its walls adorned with paintings by local artists, and the smell of grilled meat filling the air, creating an atmosphere of homely comfort. Pam loved this place for its warmth and friendly staff. She had decided to book a table for herself and her husband, but even this routine gesture would lead to events that would prove to be much more complicated than they seemed. The restaurant was quite popular, but as it turned out later, the management had its own set of troubles. Pam walked in, where she was greeted by two waitresses, one of whom, a young woman with short dark hair, clearly wasn't in the mood for small formalities. Her name was Anna, and she appeared tired. Pam noticed this even before they started talking. "Good afternoon, Ms. Bondi," Anna said, trying to smile, but her voice revealed a clear strain. "Hello, Anna," Pam replied, smiling, though there was something unusual in her eyes. She wasn't used to being recognized outside political circles, and this made her slightly uneasy. "I'd like to book a table for 2 tomorrow, around 6 in the evening." "Of course, Ms. Bondi," Anna responded, but her hands, flitting through the records, were unsteady, unlike a professional. She started pressing the pen down too hard, as if trying to put all her feelings into every motion. "Are you all right?" Pam asked, trying to be polite but attentive to the situation. Anna paused for a moment, then looked into Pam's eyes, and something seemed to snap in her mind. "Sorry, ma'am, we have some issues here." Anna's voice became heavy, and she turned away, feeling like she couldn't continue the conversation. Pam understood that this was more than just a routine mistake. She herself had gone through many challenges in her career and often felt how hard it was to keep everything under control when chaos reigned around her. But today, her intuition told her that there was something more going on here than just a minor inconvenience. A few minutes later, she sat at a table by the window, enjoying the view of the city, but still couldn't shake the thought of what was happening in the restaurant. When Anna brought her the menu, Pam decided to ask one more question. "How long have you been working here?" she asked. "Quite a while." Anna began to get nervous again, her movements becoming faster, less confident. 8 months. "Everything okay, Anna?" Pam asked softly, understanding that there might be something more behind this simple answer. I just can't find balance with everything. I'm always trying, but here." Anna fell silent again, and her eyes seemed to well up with tears. "We're having problems with the staff, with the manager, with everything." Pam paused. If he hadn't been so careful, hadn't changed the tone of her conversation to something more sensitive, she might not have learned about this situation. In a world where politics and business often intertwine, she knew that people often couldn't express their problems, especially when they had no one to trust. "Maybe we should talk to the manager," Pam suggested. At that moment, Anna was silent, but her eyes clearly showed doubt. "It won't help," she said with a bitter laugh. "They just don't want to listen." Pam had an idea that these words might mark the beginning of her own intervention. She knew that sometimes even a small conversation could change a lot. And perhaps today she would be the person who helped resolve this situation, even if it wouldn't be easy. But this time, like every other case, her path wouldn't be simple. Pam wasn't sure why this question had dragged her in so much, but she felt that she was on the edge of something important. She understood that every moment in the restaurant could become a turning point for something bigger, and what she had just learned promised many unpredictable consequences. Anna seemed ready to say more, but at the same time, she was holding herself back. Her eyes wandered helplessly toward the kitchen, where the altered faces of the staff were visible, and Pam felt the air grow heavier. as if a storm was about to break out. Suddenly, a man from a nearby table approached them. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit, and his facial expression suggested that he was part of the same system, the same world where problems were just obstacles in the way of goals. His eyes appeared cold to Pam, but with a deep understanding of what was going on. "What's going on here?" the man asked as he approached the table. His voice was low and sharp, like the snap of a string. "Anna, are there any issues?" Anna took a few steps back, trying to appear calm, but her face immediately turned pale. She clearly wasn't ready for this intervention, especially not for Pam to support her. "It's just none of your business," she replied, trying to sound confident, but her words came across as insincere. Pam stood up from her seat, watching the scene unfold. She sensed that the situation was escalating. She understood that this was no longer just a minor problem with the restaurant. It was something more, a fight for control, for the right to voice an opinion, for the chance to be heard. "Who are you?" Pam asked, not looking at Anna or the man, but at the situation as a whole. The man looked at her coldly, his gaze seeming to pierce the air. "I'm part of the management. My job is to ensure everything goes according to plan, Ms. Bondi," he replied, as if he had known her for a long time. Pam took a moment to catch her breath. She had been prepared for her popularity to lead to situations like this, but she had never thought that her intervention in a simple conversation could lead to something like this. "You're talking about control?" she asked. "You want everything to go according to your plan, regardless of the fact that people here have their own problems." Anna, silently standing off to the side, looked increasingly tired, as if these words were tearing her apart from the inside. The man shrugged, as if her question was something trivial. People don't always understand that business interests are more important than their own emotions. This is really just business. And anyone who doesn't fit into the framework becomes a problem. And problems need to be eliminated. Pam felt these words hit her heart like a heavy blow. She couldn't understand how someone could so cynically view human life. "I disagree with you," she said sharply, her voice becoming more firm. "People are not just part of the system. And if you don't change your approach, this could have serious consequences." The man smiled with undisguised contempt. "Do you really think one voice can change the system?" He placed his hands on the table and leaned closer to Pam. "Everyone here plays their part, Ms. Bondi. And you're no exception." The conversation became tense, and each word felt like a blow that couldn't be avoided. Pam felt her heart race, but she couldn't back down. Now she knew that from this moment on, her life would never be the same. She was faced with a choice: remain silent and leave things as they were, or go all the way, even if it led to a conflict that could unfold on every level. Anna, quietly standing nearby, understood that the moment had come. She could no longer remain in the shadows. She took a step forward. "I want to change everything," she said, her voice trembling, but there was a newfound determination in it. "I can't stay silent anymore." And like a fire suddenly igniting in the dark, this situation could no longer be stopped. The man in the suit gathered himself, as if contemplating how to respond to Anna's unexpected frankness. He paused, then laughed. It was a laugh that left no room for jokes, cold, ruthless. "It seems you've forgotten your place," he said, looking at Anna as though she were part of some object that needed to be replaced. "We're all here just to do our job. If you can't handle that, then you simply don't belong in this game." Anna was silent at first, her jaw clenched, her eyes filled with inner conflict. She wanted to say more, but the words seemed to choke her, as if her voice were held hostage. However, her determination grew, and she felt that this moment was her chance. Perhaps her last chance to change her fate. "I can't stay silent anymore," she repeated, and this time her voice was firm, like the first thunder before a storm. Pam watched the scene, feeling her own resolve burning inside. She knew that there was more to this situation than just a conflict in a restaurant. It was a clash of two worlds, one where every move and every word is controlled by the system, and another where people are willing to stand up for their rights, even if it means changing everything. The man in the suit took a step back and tilted his head, as if trying to assess the scale of what was happening. Then his lips twisted into a sinister smile. "You think your not staying silent will change anything?" he asked, his voice almost questioning. "You don't even understand the world you live in, Pam Bondi. Maybe in your world, people can change something, but here, everything runs by different rules." Pam couldn't hold back. "I understand perfectly well," she replied defiantly. "And that's exactly why I'm here. I'm not going to stand aside when I see you manipulating people to maintain your power." The man stared at her, but this time, he didn't seem so confident. He was silent for a few seconds, and the air grew even heavier. "You think you can change this system? You have no idea how many people have already tried," he answered, his voice becoming less certain, a little doubtful. "All of them failed. What makes you think you'll be any different?" Pam took a deep breath, trying to gather herself. She felt that this moment could change everything she knew about herself, the world around her, and her principles. "Maybe what sets me apart is that I'm determined not to back down," she said with firm resolve, making it clear that this time, she wasn't just throwing words into the void. Anna, standing nearby, finally gathered her thoughts and turned to Pam, her eyes filled with support. "I'm ready to go with you," she said, her voice now strong and clear. "This isn't just about the restaurant, it's about all of us. If I stay here, I'll always be subjugated to this system, and I can't tolerate that anymore." The man stepped back as if preparing to leave, but before he did, he glanced at Anna one more time, almost as if trying to predict her decision. His gaze was a mix of disappointment and anger. "You've made your choice," he said coldly, "and it will have consequences." Pam, no longer paying attention to his words, turned to Anna. "Are you ready to act?" she asked, her voice calm, but with inner strength. "Yes," Anna replied, her face becoming more determined. "I am ready, and even if I'm alone, I won't stay silent anymore." And while these words couldn't change everything in an instant, they marked the beginning of a great conflict. Pam and Anna stood at the threshold of what would likely become not just their fight, but a battle for justice that would demand great sacrifices. The restaurant had become the place where a new story began. And this story promised to be not only complicated but dangerous. The man in the suit silently watched them, his face turning to stone. He slowly took a step back, but his dark gaze never left Anna and Pam. They stood, not averting their eyes, each feeling the tension in the air rise. The silence was broken by the voice of one of the employees, who approached them with trembling hands. His eyes were filled with fear, and it was clear he didn't want to be caught in this struggle. "Anna, Pam, maybe we should calm down? This could lead to serious consequences," he said, his voice barely audible. Anna dismissed his words, her eyes burning with determination. "I won't stay silent, not anymore," she shouted, her words ripping through the air. "If not us, then who? Only if we stop this now, there's a chance to change something." Pam looked at her, feeling her heart race with shared resolve. She wasn't ready to back down. Now or never. "If you're ready, I'm ready," Pam said, her voice firm, with a resolve that brooked no doubt. But this moment did not go unnoticed. Another man emerged from the kitchen, the restaurant's senior manager, the one who always stood behind the scenes controlling all decisions. His gaze was so stern that one could feel how it could break anyone's will. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice like a blow, overwhelming the entire restaurant. His presence was as heavy as a fiery ball. "Anna, Pam, don't you think your fight is going against how we operate here?" Anna lifted her head, her eyes burning. She was ready for this moment. "No," she replied, her voice clear and sharp. "You don't understand what's happening. This isn't just about the restaurant. This is about us. We can't be part of this system anymore. This is no longer a question of how we operate. It's a question of humanity. The senior manager wasn't prone to emotions. He simply shrugged, his face remaining impenetrable, like a rock. Do you think you can change this system? You don't have a chance. Here, we control everything, from every detail to every employee. You won't be able to stop this machine, Anna. You don't know how it works. Pam decided it was time to respond. And you're telling me that all of this is right? She asked, her voice turning sharp. You're telling me that everything we do is ignored because of your power? The people here aren't just resources for your plans. The senior manager fell silent, his eyes growing heavy, and for a moment, it seemed he was reflecting. We all have our roles, he finally replied. And you, like everyone else, have yours. You can't forget the place you occupy. You wouldn't want to find yourself outside the system, would you? Meanwhile, Anna, her eyes burning with the desire to change everything, stepped forward, her body tense, ready for the fight. Pam felt her determination and knew this moment couldn't be lost. I don't want to be part of this system, she said, her voice sounding brave. We can do this differently. I won't stand aside when I see how all of this is destroying people. If it comes to it, I'm ready to go all the way. The man in the suit, the senior manager, and all those who hid their true selves behind the mask of power understood. The situation had changed. Their methods no longer worked. They had lost control. Anna turned to Pam, her gaze clearer than ever. Together, we can change everything, she said firmly. And I'll fight for it even if I'm alone. Pam slammed her fist on the table, feeling the world explode around her. She was ready for this fight, ready to fight for the people, ready to fight for what's real and right. And this moment was just the beginning. The restaurant had become the arena for their confrontation. And although their choice came with a price this time, they knew that leaving everything as it was would cost them far more. Pam and Anna stood in the center of the restaurant, their gazes meeting, and there were no more doubts between them. They had made their choice, and even if it meant great sacrifices, they would not back down. The man in the suit, the senior manager, looked at them, his face remaining cold and impenetrable, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Losing control of the situation was unacceptable to him, but he knew, at this moment, nothing could be changed. If you think this is that easy, you're mistaken, he said, his voice becoming less confident. This system is deep, and even if you decide to leave it, we'll find a way to do things our way. Anna, undeterred by his words, turned to Pam and quietly said, We'll do it right. If we don't change anything now, then who will be next? Pam took a deep breath, her heart beating evenly, like fire on a winter night. Yes, we will change everything, she said, lifting her head. And this time we won't stop. They turned to each other, ready for the final step. Pam and Anna walked toward the restaurant exit, leaving behind the emptiness and the vacant stare of the man in the suit, who paused for a moment as if doubting his victory. What they left behind was important, but even more important was what they were carrying with them. They weren't just leaving the restaurant. They were heading toward a future where there was no longer room for manipulation and injustice. They were creating a new reality, and although their path wouldn't be easy, they knew their choice would be a turning point. The world hadn't changed overnight, but the changes had begun. Pam and Anna stepped out of the restaurant under the night sky, and though their hearts were heavy with what they had endured, their faces carried an expression of certainty. They were ready for whatever awaited them next. And while they didn't yet know the consequences of their decision, one thing was clear. They would never forget this moment. And this was just the beginning of a great battle.